Welcome to Empowering Humility, where we're on a mission to promote human flourishing by restoring humility as a common denominator in society today. Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowering Humility podcast. Today, we have a very fun guest I'm really excited for you guys to listen to. In addition to the inimitable, ever-present Giancarlo Newsom, thank you for joining me again. But the special guest today is Ernesto Sirolli, and he is the founder of the Sirolli Institute. And I want him to give us a quick background here in a second about what that is and his work. But today, we are talking about doing good versus looking good. So we are talking about how humility plays a part in global aid. And so, Ernesto, if you don't mind, give us just a few minutes of who you are, what you do, and why you're on the show today.
Brandon, I cannot even give you 1 minute per year because I'm 75 years old. Can you imagine? So what I like to say that I was born in Italy. I started to travel because my father was a doctor, and one of his posting was Benghazi in Libya. I started to work to travel when I was 8 years old. Started to learn different languages, and that changed me. I never adapted to the Italian lifestyle because I knew that the world was much, much bigger. Started then to work in international aid when I was 21 years old. Worked for the Italian government technical cooperation with African countries until 77. And then I went to do a PhD in a university in South Africa. From there, I transferred to a university in Australia. I did a PhD on this very strange idea to only do international aid in response to the needs of the local people instead of arriving uninvited to tell them what to do. And some 14 years ago, I gave a TED talk that has gone viral. And the TED Talk title is, "If you really want to help someone, shut up and listen." And it is because of that TED Talk that Giancarlo Newsom discovered my work. We have been friends since. And of course, the idea of we Western people shut up and listening to local indigenous people, African people, Asian people, Latin American people is kind of extraordinary. But I am the living proof that it works beautifully to capture the passion, the imagination, the idea of local people worldwide. Because for the last 40 years, I have worked in 28 countries in every continent, and we have helped to discover the passionate idea of local would-be entrepreneurs. And we have helped to start some 65,000 companies without ever giving them the idea, but simply responding and facilitating what they wanted to do. So this is my very brief story. I've written 2 books. I'm writing another book now. And, I advocate for a complete transformation in the way we do. We relate with the other. And by the other, I mean the person that doesn't look like us, doesn't share our religion, does not share our cultural background. That's called the other. I maintain that right now we only have 2 ways of dealing with the other. And the 2 ways are we are either patronizing or paternalistic. I believe that both are wrong. And I believe that it's about time that we start to respect, listen, and facilitate instead of treating people as if they were our children or as if they were our servants. So that's me.
Okay, I want to get to some of that, what you just said, I think is so beautiful and so important, and I want to dive into all that. But first, how many languages do you speak?
Well, when I was in Libya, I was obliged. I went to an Italian school that taught in Italian, taught in English, and we had Arabic, it was compulsory. Then I studied French when I was in Italy during my high school, and English, and I studied German, even though it was so hard for me. And then professionally, I spent time in Latin America, so I can understand Spanish. I can, struggle through in a Spanish country. But I would say that my second language was French, better than English when I was a teenager, and I was invited to join that organization of work in Africa because I spoke French, even though the organization never sent me to a French-speaking country. So that's my story,
I love that.
and I don't know whether that of any use to you, but
No. I'm curious. I'm very American, so I only know a little bit of English.
If I can jump in, my personal connection with Ernesto, there were two, and I think we all see the Matrix movie, we get the red pill. It's like one event, but I think that's not reality. I think God, the universe gives us different red pill moments that takes the blinders off our eyes. And Ernesto's TEDx that he talked about was one of those moments. First, it was Poverty Inc., which really made me go, wait a minute. You mean, because I bought some Tom's shoes. I'd never thought that extra pair of shoes they gave away was taking the job away of a tailor. And to Ernesto's point, how patronizing that is to think that folks have been making shoes for thousands of years. Like how patronizing and paternalistic again is that behavior, and actually, it was another Army soldier who introduced me to your TEDx, Ernesto. So that was really cool. And by the way, our last guest, Francesco Finazzi, who is the entrepreneur who built the
yes,
early stress
absolutely.
detection tool. He's a friend of Ernesto, and Ernesto introduced me to Francesco. So the circle's complete, and it's fun. And I think while Ernesto's work and our his came out of the aid and development world, but this idea of patronizing and being paternalistic, it's not just in the aid and development world. That pride, and that's why I'd say, Ernesto, you very much inspired the whole awakening of this is a movement of humility, and but it doesn't apply just to aid work. It applies everywhere. Like even the way we listen in a domestic market, in a modern market, it has value. But anyhow, I'll turn it back over to you, Brandon, but I thought the audience might appreciate knowing, hey, Giancarlo, how'd you meet Ernesto? And it's been fun.
Yeah, I love that. That relationship is so important. Of why is he even on this show? But yes, no, I'm very curious, Ernesto, if you could talk a little bit about what you were talking to Giancarlo and me before we started recording about humility. And I think you had this really lovely definition of how you see humility. What does it mean to you? How would you define that to somebody?
Yeah, humility is not being servile. Servile means that you make yourself small out of fear. So you become a yes man. That's not being humble. That is to be a coward. To be humble is different. To be humble is recognizing that the person in front of you is an extraordinary human being with extraordinary gifts. And maybe these gifts are not expressed. Maybe these gifts are being repressed. Maybe the person in front of you is a victim of a victim. I like to say that we are all victims of victims because our parents, for instance, do you realize that all our parents, for the people born after the Second World War, they were people with post-traumatic stress, but they were untreated. So we all victims of parents who struggled through the war, through depression. They were people who nowadays we will call traumatized. So I know when I look at somebody and I see maybe fear or anger or even hatred, I look at them in the eye and I say, the poor guy, what has happened to you for you to be so traumatized that you fear other people? You fear other human beings? What kind of baggage are you carrying? What kind of insecurity? What kind of dread? What has happened to you? So, I come from a family of physicians in Italy, and I was absolutely blown away when I discovered growth psychology, humanistic psychology, because for the humanistic psychologist, the most important person in the meeting is not the doctor, it's the patient. So Carl Rogers used to say, I look at the person and I start to listen to the person with this absolute, awe of people. I listen to them, I look at them in the eye, and then the only thing I do, I try to remove the obstacle that are stopping the person from growing. I don't do anything to the person. I don't touch the brain. I don't give it a pill. I don't try to calm the anxiety. I simply notice from outside there are lots of obstacles surrounding the person. So I ask questions to say, every time you talk about your mother, you cry. Why? Every time and all of a sudden the person says, no, I don't. They said, well, how come, you in 15 minutes, you have mentioned your mother 5 times? What happened with your mom? What happened with your father? And all of a sudden you remove the obstacle, but you remove the obstacle so that the person can keep growing. And so what we believe, the reason why I am so in love with people is because profoundly I know that every single human being has a dream to improve himself, improve herself. We
Ernesto,
are wonderful.
one of the themes that I've had some people push back on me on, but you just represented it, is that when I bring up empowering humility, I get like this immediate reaction where some people, they just immediately they cringe. They feel like I'm about to shackle them. I'm like, no, the empowering humility is your liberation. It's the root of freedom. So when you're talking about those obstacles that Carl Rogers, all he's doing is he's just helping us unlock those things. And that's what I love with you and those who really embrace their not even weaknesses, just their uniqueness, right? Allows you to embrace others. I mean, the freedom is beautiful. It's so liberating,
I like to tell the story. Ken Robertson, in one of his TED Talk, tells the story about this little girl. The teacher is given to all the little kids piece of paper and some crayons, and they said, draw whatever you want. So she goes around and she sees this little girl and says, oh, what are you drawing? And she says, I'm drawing God. And the teacher says, but nobody knows what God looks like. And the girl says, give me 10 minutes and I'll show you. He says, I'm drawing God. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Give me 10 minutes.
Wow.
And it's the same thing with me. I have somebody in the community said to me, oh, don't work with that person because that person has been a failure all his life. He's a bankrupt. Yeah. And I said, yeah, because he didn't have me helping him.
Wow.
Wait until. So give me 10 minutes and I'll show you that the poor guy, the only reason why he failed all his life is because nobody, helped him. Nobody said to him, you're making a wonderful product. Can you sell it? No, I hate selling it. Okay, let's find somebody in the village who likes to sell, who will take your product to the market. Do you understand money? No, I don't understand anything. Let's find somebody who's prepared 1 hour a month to help you with the books. And so 65,000 business, but we don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people. I can tell you that every night I go to sleep thinking, I wonder how many people's lives have been changed by one of my enterprise facilitators. Because the way we do development, we train a local person in a village who then, for free and in confidence, paid by a third party, the government, a foundation, a corporation, works with all these people who have always failed. And they failed because the poor guys, they did not know that you cannot run a business alone. You need three different characters. Somebody who loves to go to the market, somebody who likes to toil in the garden, and somebody who likes the numbers. So simple, it's ridiculous. We never listen. We never listen. We never, we don't, we should, there is a Rumi, the philosopher, who says there are a million ways to kneel in front of the sun. And they say there are a million ways to kneel in front of people. Million ways of being absolutely blown away by the beauty. The beauty. All my friends when I came to America, I was invited by a professor of rural development in rural Minnesota. So all my friends are from the Midwest. And do you think that I had ever met somebody that I did not like? I work, on my board, we have Democrats and Republicans working together. They all adore what we do for completely different reasons. For the Republicans, what we do is chaotic because this is the way America was created by entrepreneurship. And the Democrats love it because we we help anybody, because we're in love with people.
I mean, I think what you're tapping into is that it's such a human principle. Like what you just said is that anything
is humble because you kneel in front of people. You look at them to say, wow, you really do this? And I heard stories about farmers in the Midwest in January with the temperature is -20, going into the field and try to lift this calf that is half frozen. And he puts it on his back and he drags this calf and he falls with the face in the mud. These are real people. How can you love them?
But Ernesto, now I'm going to be the pessimist. So you gave before we got on, you gave an analogy of what you said. You talked about the bird. We show the feathers, but we don't show the bird we killed. How do people get consumed with looking good and ignore doing good?
Well, it's their loss. They don't even understand the beauty of, quite frankly, there is nothing like helping another human being. It is in our gene forever. The most powerful entity in the world is a group of humans working together. Imagine that we are so weak physically, but do you realize that the most scary, ferocious animals, they only live now because of our goodwill? Do you realize that we naked monkeys have tamed the most ferocious animals in the world? They only exist because we allow them to exist. There's never been one person, one tyrant. There's never been anybody who has been able to stop a group of us in history. We are the most extraordinary, powerful creatures. And so I look at the people who think that they can control us, with pity. They have no idea what's going to happen to them. I would never put myself in a situation where
Prisoners.
really, do you realize, did you realize what the power of just a group of us historically? So my point is, when I see people who have to do something to demonstrate their quality, when, I'm thinking, wow, really, you have to demonstrate? And so I consider humility, the humility of Nelson Mandela. Because now, imagine that. He did not, exercise revenge. So,
Wow.
to me, Mandela is a man of arete. And arete is the virtue, the pre-Socratic virtue of a man or a woman who knows what is right and what is wrong for himself. So imagine pre-Christianity, thousands of years before Christ, there were people who behaved in a certain way only because it was dictated by their own conscience. So the externalities, sure. You can, try to be seen as a person of success. But what we learn from psychology is this. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you cannot lie. So you can imagine a situation where you try to appear successful, and then in your hearts of hearts that you're not. And there are people who would give everything they have if they could claim a noble past. Imagine they would give everything they have if they would claim that in the eyes of the public, they are noble spirits. They give anything.
Which goes back to, you have self-respect before you can respect others. That you love
cannot
yourself.
respect if you have no self-respect. You cannot love others if you don't love yourself. So it's only an illusion. So humility is the humility of somebody that when looks at you. Okay, I'll tell you, this is a true story. We had people for dinner in my house in California, and we always ask some fun questions. And the question that night was, who is the greatest celebrity you have ever met? And so somebody had met, one of the Mick Jagger in a hotel, lift. The other one I had encountered physically Salvador Dali when I was 19 in Barcelona, and I described meetings. And one of the people during the dinner said, I had tea with Nelson Mandela.
Wow.
And we said, okay, you won. Now you have to describe. And we said, what happened? She said, well, I had a friend who worked for him. So he said to me, would you like to meet Nelson Mandela? And I said, absolutely. But I did not expect that it was just the three of us in Nelson's house having tea. So I said, oh my God. So what did you ask? What great wisdom. He says, no. He only wanted to know about me.
Wow.
What? Nelson Mandela wanted to know about him. He was 27. The entire conversation was about him, his dreams. Can you imagine going to the White House, being invited, and having a conversation where nobody is the center of attention? Who is the greatest leader? So my point is, come on, guys. Humility is not a servile attitude where you are scared to talk. Remember the beautiful poem by Marianne Williamson? Our greatest fear is not our light, our shadow. Our greatest fear is our light. Our greatest fear is how powerful we are. And to play small doesn't benefit anybody. So it's not about playing small. It's about really being able be such a whole person, to have worked so much on yourself that you really, really took pity of yourself. You embrace the kid. You embrace the traumatized life, because we all have traumas. And then you recognize those traumas in others. So humility is, I know how hard it is, my friend. You don't have to tell me. And I don't know what's happening with me, but Marta said, oh my God, Ernesto, you really call for the people who are suffering, because we stopped in a cafe in the middle of New Zealand, rural New Zealand, and there was this guy who came to talk to me about his what he was facing. And the guy, I was having a coffee. It was first time. I will never be in that village. And this guy came to talk to me about his personal problem, because I look people in the eye. You know what they say in the army? Don't you ever look your enemy in the eye, because you will never be able to kill it. And so what I said to people is that look at people in the eye. That's humility. Don't arrive in a place and look at that. Because they're black people, you don't make eye contact. Because they're Asian, you don't make contact. Because they're gay, you don't make contact. You look at people in the eye. That's the beginning of humility.
What I'm hearing from you is, first of all, a very powerful human principle, as I was saying earlier, and clearly others have too. Your TED Talk has over 800,000 views on YouTube. This is something,
4 million actually on
4 million maybe total. Yeah. So just in the video that I saw, 800,000, but 4 million total across all the different channels. It's amazing.
The TED platform is 4 million, and
so
with the YouTube we are about 5 million. But what is important to me is something else about the TED Talk. Is I thought that I was addressing a very specialized, tiny little field of endeavor. Instead, now I have calls from people to say, I saw your TED Talk and it changed the way I relate with my teenage son.
Wow. I love that.
Shut up and listen. Who the hell you think you are? They have problems. They are trying to find themselves. What is the humility is really starts with respect. So respect, I think, is the key word. If you're humble, you respect people. I searched once for the etymology of the word humble, and it comes from the soil. So of the soil. And, in Italian, we don't have any negative connotation. La terra is mother. La terra, that's the word for soil. But la terra is what gives us life. So it's not dirt. We don't have anything in Italy that is negative about la terra. The French, terroir is what gives the grapes the unique flavor. Oh my God, the terroir is like not only Mother Earth, but it's a giving mother. So I think that in that sense, to say that somebody who comes from the earth is humble, of humble origin, I really think that in that connotation, I would like to say that we are all born in the dirt. We all born in blood. We all born in in a very humble way. That's our nature. So the idea that somehow you can escape that fate, no, you can't. You can't. And so I don't know. It's a little bit philosophical. I don't know
This is
whether
great.
this
This is great. I feel like we haven't covered so many things that I wanted to cover. No, this is great. Okay, so we have just a few minutes left. I'm curious, Ernesto. I have one question for you. In 1 minute,
Yeah.
what would you say to somebody who has ambition, who wants to, let's say, go out and change the world, who wants to do development work, who wants to be a philanthropist, who wants to change other people, whether they're a therapist or a mother or whatever it might be, and they're afraid of seeming arrogant. And so there's this, because what you're describing is like this two-way street to humility. First, you have to be humble yourself. You have to take the position of being a humble person. And then you have to approach others in humility and work out whatever their challenge is in a humble way. But to do really hard work, you have to be not arrogant, but ambitious, driven. You have to have some kind of courageous optimism.
Yeah.
How do you be that kind of person, but do it in a humble way? What advice would you say to somebody who's young, who has these big dreams and wants to be humble? What would you say?
It's happening right now. I have people writing to me to say, I'm working for a foundation and we're doing work in Africa and we are going to arrive there and we are giving them internet and solar panels. And so I have lots of people doing that. And my point is that be incredibly, what you do, there is one part is education and one part is responding to local needs. So what you do, speak at every single conference, tell everybody what you wish to do, and then wait to be invited. Only work in response. So what you do is you do lots of educating. You go around, you speak at conference, and you say, look, we help people by doing this, and that, and then go away. Because when you do that, then you receive a telephone call from the city, from the leader of that tribe that says, look, this is a real case. In Chile, somebody, the Mapuche leader, got in touch with me to say, what we would like, we have some forestry, we have we produce some renewable timber. What we would like is to have some electricity, maybe with some solar panels. And we do not want electricity in the houses, in the private houses. We would like to put a array of panels on top of the one factory that is manufacturing this income for the village. And we would like to have some electric machinery. That's why we need electricity. But we don't want to have electricity in all the houses because there is no demand. We are quite happy with the traditional way. So my point is that go around the world, tell everybody what you want to do, what you are prepared to do, and then go away and wait to be invited. Because imagine if doctors would stop people in the street to say, you are pale, I don't like the way you look, you're overweight. The people would say, go away, what are you talking about? It's my life.
Let me give you a shot.
And you are stopping me in the street?
Mm-hmm.
See? So my point is that, you see, so it's very simple. We can educate as much as we want, but then we have to have the decency of going away because we are not missionaries. We don't believe that our way is better than their way. I wish I had a kid that was so fantastic as this little Mexican kid or the kids that I've seen in the mountains of Nepal. I wish, we were so fortunate. So my point is that who the humility is to say, who the hell we think we are to go uninvited, enter a house uninvited to teach that person how to educate her daughter. How dare we? See? How dare we? That's humility to say, to understand that there is so much beauty, so much wisdom, so much culture that is different from our culture. But so what? Could be better.
But Ernesto
Yes,
and Brandon, to wrap up here, I want to put a challenge out to anyone who's a corporate leader or institutional leader. When you look in the mirror, like Ernesto said, if you have a hard time looking in the eye of that person in the mirror, don't be threatened by that. Embrace that discomfort and just know that's that quiet calling to humble yourself. Because all the corporate leaders that, let's say, are sending equipment, sending money, sending help where it's not wanted and welcome, we know we can't look in the mirror and be proud of that. Even this week in some of my work, I had a frustrating situation where it's still happening way too much. And I think it's hard to live with ourselves when our conscience tells us that ultimately we're exploiting others. And I think the root of pride is ultimately death. It's strange, Ernesto, not to get philosophical, but I remember this venture capitalist that I helped find to buy a wonderful company, some wonderful people who took great advantage. They were the epitome of vulture capital. He ended up committing suicide because he couldn't look himself in the mirror. I'd say he succumbed to pride. And even if you don't succumb to suicide, you can, I think, to not be able to look in the mirror and feel good. I think we all saw the joy, Brandon, that Ernesto had, someone who embodies empowering humility, who knows that it's just who sees the beauty in every human being. Because first, like you mentioned, we acknowledge it in ourselves, but I really think that we have a little bit of a crisis of humility in a lot of our corporate leadership, especially in America, where we've kind of sold ourselves on certain areas of success at the expense of others. And I know a lot of folks like me, and I can confess, I think I was one of those. So I just wanted to give a challenge that, empowering humility may be a little hard at first, but boy, when you finally embrace it and you can finally realize you don't have to have all the answers, every other human being is as valuable as you, and how kind of exciting and creative it is to discover the beauty of every human being. It's a ball of fun. Every time I talk to Ernesto, I just have so much fun. So thank you, Ernesto. I hope to my corporate friends who are wearing the golden handcuffs, I remember talking about that. Embrace humility. Yeah. And Brandon, any other thoughts?
Well, all I can say is I'm very glad that Giancarlo invited you to this podcast so that we could have this conversation. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your expertise. I know you've been doing this for 40 years, speaking in front of literally millions of people now, 65,000 organizations. Incredible work. Thank you, Ernesto.
Bye-bye. It was lovely speaking to you, Brandon. Giancarlo, we will be in touch soon.
Always
absolutely
fun.
Lovely to speak to you about these kind of topics, which are really, really, really important in this time. There are too many people who are lost. They don't know who to believe anymore. They don't know how to live, and they have to start to look inward and do some work on themselves first. Free themselves, liberate yourself, start to have a little bit of compassion for yourself. To come to a point where you can love yourself.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Sirolli.
For being here.
Okay.
Thanks, Brandon.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye. See you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.